Downstream from town. So here's our gardens, all sorts of stuff. Hello walkers, and welcome back to City Walks, and welcome back to Livingston, Montana. On this channel I walk you around and show you quirky and interesting and nuanced things about a place. Sometimes it's a new place, or sometimes like today it is a place we've walked before because I actually live here and have for the last 17 years, it occurred to me today. My kids were born here, I was married here, and we love it. This time of year can be a little tough to love it, but it is beautiful. I need some helpers today, and I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. And it's basically just answering a couple questions. So maybe take a minute of your time, 2 minutes of your time, and I'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to talk to you about where we are. We are at the east end of Livingston on Veterans Bridge, and you can see the railroad crossing or bridge over there as well. We are crossing the Yellowstone River, and this is downstream from town. We've walked along the dike several times. If you're new to the channel, it's one of the places I've walked. We've walked downtown. We've walked up on the hill where the fish in the octagon are, a little octagon house on the top of the hill, and a few other places. You can see this time of year, it is, by the way, about 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 0 Celsius. It's a little after 11 a.m. at the beginning of March. I like to give that out. And in fact, I'm going to do a little introduction here. My name is Henry. I will be your proxy walker today, your virtual travel guide, and your code discoverer. I'm going to flip you back around. And I say code discoverer because when we walk in new places, I often am new to them myself, and I like to share those discoveries with you, take you along. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the geography. You've got that big mountain is Livingston Peak. You can kind of see maybe the profile of a prone face, and that's the sleeping giant. And then you get back into the Absaricas and that sort of thing, snowy back there. And that little notch in the mountains there is where the Yellowstone flows through. You can see a lot of waterfowl are still here for the winter. We've had a very mild winter, but we had a bunch of snow yesterday, and it's still warm. It froze, and so it's a little icy and granular today. I want to say thank you to our Patreon supporters. The question actually is going to affect you and a little bit of the future of this channel. Nothing big, and this is Highway 89. So thank you guys to the Patreon supporters. I really do appreciate your support, your both financial and motivational support, I guess. We have got, so Livingston's a train town here, and we have a big rail yard here where they add on engines to help get trains, big freight trains, over the mountains. Everyone's kind of excited because I believe they stopped passenger rail service in the 70s or 80s, maybe the 90s. It's been a while. And everybody not everybody, but a lot of people would really like to have it back. I certainly would. I love the view of these mountains. And I have to remember about the question here in a second. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, it's the Hiawatha line, and Amtrak just recently released a study where they are looking at lines to either bring back or institute new for passenger service, and the Hiawatha line was one of them, which would make travel in the area, or could make travel in the area, a lot easier as highway or Interstate 90 just gets loaded with trucks and other traffic. Okay, to the question. So, the question that I need some helpers to help me with I would like to know if you would be interested in an ad-free video option, and that's one. And two, if you are, what you think a fair price that you would be willing to pay for that on a monthly basis. So I'm going to try and put up a poll and maybe a YouTube short, but if you could just let me know in the comments section an honest answer there. And it's just because I have a potential to do that, and it would take some monetary investment on my part and a whole lot of work and time to do, but I think it would be kind of a neat feature that I could offer. And I've heard some people express interest before in that, so hi there. So just let me know in the comments section or in the poll or whatever. And just answer once would be great. I'm just trying to get a general idea. And if there's enough people, which wouldn't take that many, then I'll try to see what I can do about implementing that. Okay, so that's what I need helpers to help me with. What else? So one of the things I like to do here is on this channel is to share the things that aren't in the conventional visitors pamphlets and the highlights and the websites and the top 10 lists and stuff. So off to our right is the sewage processing plant, but also another very important part is the recycling bins and the transfer station where you can drop oversized trash. We don't have curbside recycling here. You kind of have to do it yourself, which actually doesn't end up being that big of a deal. We go once every couple weeks maybe. Take it over there, dump it in the bins. Takes about 10 minutes. But that's one of those little things that you may not realize. And there's a big election this March, about whether we want to build a recreation center, a big new recreation center that's already fully funded in terms of grants and private donations, etc. And it would go kind of between us and that ridge over there on basically a city park that's doesn't get a lot of use at the moment. Off to our left here, I gotta insulate this battery a little bit, is the KPRK building, which has been around for, I don't know, as long as radio, it feels like. But someone's bought this land, and I think they're going to move that building to another location. It used to have these sort of down here on the ground, you can see a bit of the facade and chunks of the facade and design of it that was from the 30s or 40s, I guess. It's kind of neat. We are currently on what's called the O Street Connector, and it's kind of a neat paved bike path that was put in several years ago, and it leads from town all the way out to the hospital, which is really pretty handy. It's also Myers River Trail, which we've filmed several walks on, including one where it was even way more colder than it is today. You can find these walks I created a website for the purpose of making finding walks easier. And so you can go there and there's these drop-down lists by location, drop-down list by walk time, and a search feature, rather than having to wade through, something like 3 billion videos, 10 billion videos on YouTube. YouTube's great. I love the service. Their search feature is not always as useful as I'd like. So anyway, check that out. citywalksvirtualtours.com if you would like to find our walks a little bit more easily. And has been a time in my life when we've lived here that you sort of take that view for granted. And last year or so, I've been trying to be a little more present, and I've been noticing how beautiful that view is much more often. And it really is a treasure, a huge asset of living here. The downside of living here is the wind. Livingston is windier. It's one of the most windy cities in the U.S., windier than Waco, Texas, which tops out most lists. And we haven't had too much wind this year, but because it's mostly in winter. And last week we had several days where they had gusts. We were having gusts of 60 or 70 miles an hour all day, all night, making the house creak, knocked off the top of one of our trees out front. And most of these trees have grown with the wind, so they have developed the strength or broken off and died. And it's actually, the power of it is pretty amazing to experience. But it can grind. Some train, looks like a maintenance train over there. We get a lot of coal coming through here, open coal cars coming here. I think they go out to the West Coast and get shipped to Asia for power purposes. We get a lot of oil tanker cars, same reason. And then we also often see Boeing jet fuselages coming through, and they're all wrapped in this green plastic. And I think they're headed out to Seattle, that would be my guess. I think that's where they have the assembly plant for passenger service. This little cool bottom area, I don't know who owned it originally. It's currently owned by a local church who purchased it in, I think, 2019, 2020, and had intentions of building a new church, place of worship. And I think they may have run low on fundraising, and which is unfortunate for them, of course, but it has stayed open space here, which is also kind of nice. You'll often see deer in here, especially in the wintertime, but this winter's been so mild. Back to this bike path. The local Livingston Bicycle Club does I guess they come through every year and do a cleanup. They pick up, dropped limbs and trash that's may have blown in on the side of the road here, or side of the path, and just spend a morning doing that, which is really awesome. Keeps it nice and clean and tidy. If you are new to the channel, welcome, first of all. Here, future home of Living Hope Church. Anywho, if you are new, I do talk. This is not one of those quiet walking channels with just the ambient sounds. There's a ton of those out there, and I have some in my, if you look on the YouTube channel's it's one of the suggested pages or something. I have a bunch of those on there that I like and have built some relationships with. So those are some good suggestions if you want a quiet walk. Here, I tend to jabber. And one of the reasons, I say this sometimes, and one of the reasons I love doing this and sharing these walks with you guys, is the interaction in the community, in the comment section, the YouTube comment section. So it's been a surprise to see how wonderfully positive the vast majority of you are. And I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate your comments, and I really appreciate the feedback. Sometimes it's some constructive criticism, sometimes it's kudos, sometimes it's additional information. A lot of times it's sharing personal memories. I love that too. I'm going to take a break here. This is one of the many coffee shops in town, RX Coffee, and they have expanded that. It's a family-owned coffee shop, and they have some nice pastries and a drive-through, and just kind of cool. We are on Park Street, which is Highway 89, and we're going to cross O Street, and I think we'll go down another block or two. The population of Livingston is about 8,000 people, which we keep seeing these towns that seem smaller and have bigger populations. These other small towns around, not so much Montana, but other states. And it's surprising because it seems much smaller. It seems small, and go to these other towns that are even smaller. It's hard to imagine, it's so different than my point of reference. Anyway, we're an agricultural community as well as a tourism-based community, being close to the Yellowstone National Park. And so here's our local tractor dealership, a John Deere dealership. And we go one more block as we cross N. Because I want to show you, I don't know why, it's one of the local breweries, and I guess because I don't really film out at this end of town very much, even though I get my tires here, there is a brewery, and the owner, John, is just a really good member of the community. He does a lot of supporting activities for nonprofits and donates money. He's like a big brother in the Big Brothers program. And he does all this great stuff. And the other brewery in town is also great, but it's downtown, and I've walked past that several times. It's called Katabatic. In addition to public lands, which I often like to talk about and advocate for on this channel, I don't do a lot of politics here, but I do talk about certain things like that. I also like to talk about electric bikes and electric vehicles because I think they're awesome. And I'm starting to hear more and more about these things are called side-by-sides or mules. More and more of the electrification of those, which kind of makes a lot of sense. I haven't looked into it enough to know where the balance point is on range and weight and affordability on that. But there's some interesting metrics and considerations for that, right? Not every vehicle is currently best suited to electrification. But a lot of them are, and they have a lot of benefits. I just read an article about some city in Colorado, and they had bought an electric school bus, and they regularly were having temperatures of -30 Fahrenheit, which is got to be pretty close to Celsius. I think they match up around -40. And it was outperforming the diesel buses at that temperature. I know there's a lot of news about Chicago having all these Teslas that sort of died in the cold weather, and then the counterpoint was, Norway has more electric vehicles now than gas vehicles. I think that's correct, and they don't have any problem in those temperatures because they've learned how to. So certainly a learning curve as we move over towards a different model. I guess this is Neptune's Brewery, and again, great guy, great place, good beers, happy place to come and enjoy yourself, especially in the warm weather. The inside is pretty small, but plenty of room for people to come in and hang out with each other and just enjoy a little time of quiet area. And then they have this sort of beer garden, and they bring in a food truck in the summer, and they've got that shade area, and people can bring a well-behaved dog, well-behaved children. But it's also where I've been going on Tuesdays to play bluegrass. And I use the term play for myself very loosely because I am still a rank beginner, and I'm having a wonderful time learning how to play the mandolin, but I got a long way to go. Still, it's fun, and everybody's super welcoming, and you get 10 or 12 musicians in there, and just everybody's doing their best, and I get pushed to, or challenged to do a little bit better, play a little more, keep up a little better. Anyway, pretty cool. Oh, let's go down to the right a block, sorry. We are on, I believe we're on Calendar Street here, and we had turned down L, and we're gonna go down to K. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I wasn't until a couple years ago. But in many cities, particularly in the East Coast, older cities, which this isn't really that old, but anyway, there's typically not either an I street or J street. I think it's an I street. And the reason behind that I heard was that because the I and the J in older script and writing was hard to distinguish on a sign. So we don't have, I think it's an I street. So we'll go to K, and I think it goes to J. One or the other. Anyway, we'll find out in a minute. This is an old, off to the right here, this big building, an old, what do you call it, grain elevator and processing area. And the developers come in. It was no longer in use, and somebody came in and is converting it to apartments and condos. Super cool. Love to see that happen. And then you've got some reclaimed lumber business here as well. This is what this wood is. There's a big market for that in sort of these higher end homes that are being built by folks that have gotten, I don't know how they get their money, but they got a lot of it, and they're hiring, it's a big economic driver here, these large second homes, big fancy ones, and they use a lot of reclaimed lumber oftentimes. And we're going to go down to Lewis Street. Again, here's that view. We're looking straight at Livingston Peak, which is a pretty fun one to climb. You can drive up in the summer a fair distance, and then, but then you still have to go up a couple thousand feet. And it's at the very top where it's bare. It can get kind of slippery, and the footing isn't all that great. The one time I went up there, actually slipped and fell coming back down on some snow. But I survived. All right, we are at Lewis and K Street here. You can see some of the iciness and the melt. One of the reasons I like getting back into the neighborhoods at various cities and towns is it gives a good flavor of the culture and the people and what it's actually like there. You know, a lot of the places have nice downtowns and historic areas have been fixed up, but sometimes that doesn't really tell the whole story. You can see here on this side of town, at least, we've got a mix, and there's a lot of these older homes, smaller homes, and then you've got places where people have been able to build something a little newer, modern flavor, and it's kind of eclectic. And you see people, you know, they've got their composting and their four-wheeler and their planters, and you can see people that have started little gardens and, you know, built accessible dwelling units in the back. And then you come up with this giant snowman here. Love that. Awesome. We're gonna take a picture. All right, and this is, I guess it's I Street, so we don't have a J Street. Which is awesome. And we'll go down I Street for a ways. We went out for a walk along a road yesterday, Strickland Road, which I walked, I think, in the fall, and noticed a bunch of robins flying around, which is pretty early for robins here. And I'm hearing some, I think, up in the trees here. Somebody's got a tire missing. Magpie. Look at that blue building there. Love it. So the birds, if you're into that sort of thing, that we do have in town around here in the winter, Eurasian collar doves, crows, of course, pigeons around the buildings, magpies, and sparrows and finches. Some finches quite often. We're crossing Clark now. In a lot of places, not just Montana, but other places, they will come in and somebody will buy these little houses and, either tear them down and build something much bigger and modern, or do a quote-unquote remodel where they put a second story on and a side addition, etc., just expanding and improving. And I want to find an example house here because something just went viral from Kalispell, and that's actually bigger there, and I know the person owns this one. We'll find you up here, but I want to tell you about it. Maybe you've heard about it, but it's regarding the price of housing in Montana, and it's not true for every location, but it's affecting every location. It can't help but. Here, we'll take a look at this blue one on the corner here. So this is not for sale, and this is just an example of about the size of this house that this realtor showed in I think it was Kalispell. And the owner was asking, actually this looks bigger, so it's got this back section, $1.1 million was the asking price. Something like this here, well over 400, depending on how modernized it is. I think the median home price in this area last month was 5 something, I think. A realtor friend sent something out. So, you know, in a place without a lot of high-paying jobs, it's a real problem here. I think the house was closer in size to this yellow one, even though this yellow one seems to have a bigger lot, but maybe not. Okay, we're gonna go up to Butte Street, Butte, Montana. Of course, one of the biggest cities in Montana, or used to be, and was once the richest hill on earth, probably still is, and was mining copper, that sort of thing. Really cool city. I've done some walks in there, and I should go back and do some more walks there because it is a really cool city. And I got a lot of great comments with feedback of places, other places to go, a few corrections because I got some stuff wrong. And I'd like to go back there because it's a super cool place, and they have these underground tours there that are interesting. Oh, and we'll go over there, but we'll cross over Fleshman Creek. So I believe, and I think this is part of it, maybe it's the other side of Fleshman Creek, but it used to be actually an island in this area 100 years ago, and over the century, that channel close to the town filled in and left, I think, Fleshman Creek, or the remnants of Fleshman Creek, or Fleshman Creek flows into it and now follows the former channel. In any case, whole part of the town was an island, which many people, including myself, until recently, don't realize. This is 8th Street. It is a main thoroughfare and actually a state route. And I believe, so going up that way is Park Street. I believe there used to be a bridge down here, but it could have been the bridge that was over at Mears Landing. So this is Fleshman Creek down here. And it's not very big, it's not huge. It does get a lot of runoff in the spring oftentimes. And off to the right is basically Civic Center and Sacagawea Park and a big lagoon. And I think what that lagoon does is it acts as a stop gap, or it slows all the water down from the creek when it floods, at least once it gets there. And so this little area doesn't flood too much, at least to the best of my knowledge, my recollection. That is St. Mary's School beyond the parking lot there, a local Catholic elementary school basically, and I think they have middle school. And then beyond that is another public middle school and then a high school. This is the fairgrounds, Park County Fairgrounds and Rodeo Grounds. And we'll just take a look. In this building off to the right, they have a lot of events and that sort of thing. As you can see on the sign here, you can see a truck going along on I-90. I mean, look at those mountains, isn't that cool? This is where the Livingston Roundup happens, the biggest purse, July 4th purse in the West, I believe. In the last 3 days of actual full-on competition, they have slack for a day or so, which is, I don't know, it's sort of like the qualifying heat, as well as, I think you can, what do you call that, like the NIT, the tournament after the big tournament, so you can at least maybe win some more money or qualify. I don't really understand all the ins and outs of rodeo, so I apologize if I'm making terrible mistakes. This is a round barn. It's pretty cool. They do some 4-H stuff in there. You bring in your pig or your cow or your llama, and you walk them around and get judged. It's really kind of a neat program. And off to the left here is the ice skating rink. In the winter, if it gets cold enough, which it usually does, that lagoon I was talking about will freeze over. People will shovel snow off of it and skate out there. But a group of volunteers raised money, put in the time and the effort and the expertise to have a little skating rink here. In the city, there's some deal with the city that allows it. And I'm just going to poke my head in to see if it's okay to film. See some of the info. It's kind of in there. Lit up for disco. And they even have some loaner skates. You can have free loaner skates in there, which is pretty cool. I don't know if they still do it, but at the Civic Center, which is basically a wooden floored basketball court, a long time they were having Friday night skate nights. And you go in there and it was basically a old school roller rink, and they had skates on loan as well. I don't know if you had to rent, I don't remember if you had to rent those or not. I'm not really a skater. It's a sail pavilion. And then they've got other livestock barns in the back. It's pretty fun to come down here to the fair. They bring in some rides and carnival type stuff and fried food, that sort of thing. But our county's only 16,000 people, so it's not a huge event compared to other county and state fairs around. Still fun. And it's fun to see the community come out, and other parts of the community I might not normally see, because we all have our little bubbles, social bubbles that we live in. And it's good to try and branch out and mingle from time to time, in my opinion. Of course. They've been, you probably saw the sign light up, but they've been repairing or working on a water line here. And so what's normally a full 2-lane road is now about a lane and a half currently. It's a Sunday, so that's part of the reason it's so quiet around town. Nobody's at school. Normally I don't really like to film around schools because I don't want to put a bunch of kids without parental permission on the internet. I don't think that's a good policy. Off to the left is, the clubhouse of the Livingston golf course. It's a public course. I don't know if it's a par 3 or par 4. It's a great location. I'm not really a golfer. I have my own thoughts on that. Look at the clouds coming in on the mountains. Yesterday, before the snow came in, I guess between snows, you get these when it gets cold, it gets these low hanging clouds in there. Oh, it's super cool. Love it. Straight ahead are the, I hope I don't get this wrong, I think it's the Galtons, the northern end of the Galtons, northern end of the Galtons. which is, this goes from the Absarcas here to the Gallatins, boom, and then you get into the Madisons, the Gravelies and Tobacco Roots, and then off to the north of the Gallatins are the Bridgers. That's our sort of local mountain. And then to the north of us, which you can't really see right now, are the Crazy Mountains, which is this weird, kind of an island of mountains, but they're pretty steep and stark and really beautiful. It's kind of enjoyable, and I don't know, it makes the heart thrill a little bit to see the ruggedness of it all. I think this is Sacagawea Middle School. I'm probably getting that wrong. Or Sleeping Giant. Our kids never went to middle school because we homeschooled. And our youngest now is taking part-time classes at the high school. In some other high school activities, which is a cool ability. I think I've heard in some places you either go to school or you don't go to school. But he's having a great time. He's taking a bunch of math classes. Anyway, so I often get the names of the middle schools confused with the ones over in Bozeman that I heard a lot about when I lived over there. Oh, look at that. We have been, I think it was at 40% snowpack a month ago. So everybody is psyched to get as much snow as we can up in those mountains, because that's our water for the year. And, that's the water goes to the rivers, and the rivers are what we recreate on, and it goes to the agricultural irrigators and goes to livestock. So it's how people grow their crops and their cows, etc. Sleeping Giant Middle School. And so it's immensely important, not to mention the forests get their water, and if we don't want them to burn, they need to have water, and can't really irrigate those. This is the bus barn for the schools, off to the left. And I believe they're looking for money to buy some electric buses. I'm not sure about if I got that right or not. I hope I do. This big building straight ahead is the high school, and we'll see the little stadium and track off to the left here in a minute. But they used to have a little small scale wind turbine. I mentioned how windy it is here in the past, and one of the school clubs raised the money, paid to have it put in, did all the study and stuff. Cool learning opportunity for them. But they had to take it down because, and I don't know what the source of funds was for this, or what clubs, or if it was just a government thing, but they put solar on the roof, which I'm all for. However, the Northwestern Energy allows you to connect to their system with up to, I think it's 50 kilowatt systems. If you have more than 50 kilowatt systems, you have to go through all the things to do to be a power generator. There's a better word for that, I'm sure. This is the Park High, and their mascot is the Rangers, like the National Park Rangers. Anyway, so they maxed out their 50 kilowatts, and that wind turbine was going to take them over. So they took that down. So kind of a good news, bad news situation. Not really bad news, but just news. So my understanding is the school needs, when it's in session, more than 50 kilowatts to operate. As you can imagine, with all the computers and HVAC and lighting and AV stuff, it takes a lot. Kitchens, etc. It takes a lot of power, but they're mitigating, which is great. My new thing is, let's not let the best get in the way of better, or rather, let's do better first on the way to perfect. And that is better. So awesome. We're cutting through the parking lot here, and again, here's part of the football, soccer, track facilities. They actually had to cancel their football seasons a couple years because they couldn't muster enough students or enough players. And they didn't want to go down to, there's an 8-man league here where they have 8 players, which the smaller towns will often play. But I think they've got the program back up and running. Have my thoughts about that as well. And here is not part of the high school or the school system, but public softball and baseball fields. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is awesome. And they get a fair amount of use in the warmer weather. It's going to be a long one. A long walk today. So I think we'll go up here and see the lagoon, and we'll see a skate park, we'll see the civic center, and then we'll head downtown. This is Miles Park, and they've got little ticket kiosks there, but I don't think anybody ever sells tickets. It's an amateur team or maybe a pro-am team called the Livingston Braves, and they play over on the north side, over by the Bozeman Connector Trail, which I've also filmed. But I don't think they pay over here, and I think they might charge. I have some friends that are involved with that. I gotta check my time here. This is a skate park. We can go up here real quick. And beyond that is a civic center. They were thinking about putting that new rec center down here. Excuse me, gotta put my glove back on. And they opted not to for a couple of reasons. One, we're well within the floodplain, and we had a big flood 2 years ago that, was a close run thing. It was basically spilling over into this little plain over the dike. Luckily, all this stuff was protected, mainly sandbag. Huge community volunteer effort, people coming down, filling sandbags for the dike, but also for homeowners down the valley that were getting flooded. And it was really neat to see. you know, the people filling the sandbags and the people pulling in often had different political bumper stickers on, but they didn't really matter. And I love to see that. That's what a community is. Anyway, the other reason is where they're putting the park now is a little less economically you gotta pick the right words these days. A little less economically benefited, and their park that they have over there currently, here's a lagoon, there's a wonderful iconic little bridge. So the park they have is not as well used. It doesn't get the same amount of attention, and so I think the hope is that here's a city pool, which the rec center will also replace. They've been trying to close it for years, this one for years, because it's so leaky and antiquated. But anyway, they're hoping, I think, that the rec center will be a big benefit to the folks over there who live over there and give them a little bit of a share in the community's tax base. And it's not even a tax base, but in the community's investment. That's the word I'm looking for. And I think it's a great idea. It's a little, I mean, it would be a lot closer to me if it were over here, but nothing's too far away in this town. Another one of the great things about living in a small town. I can literally walk to the grocery store if I want. Mainly I ride my bike. My electric bike. Okay, we're on Butte again. This is 2nd Street. I think that little road where we walked, well, yeah, the road right here that we crossed over is called River Road, I believe. It's one of those things where you drive on all the time, but you never really need to look at the road sign because you don't need to go on to an address anywhere. You just go into the park or the band shell or the levee. Okay, way down here, which we will get a much better view of as we go, is the Livingston Depot. And I mentioned the interest in renewing the Hiawatha line for Amtrak's rejuvenation of passenger service, which I think would be awesome. And that is where the train station used to be. And I assume if we got a station here, that's where it would stop as well. You know, there's no guarantee that they will stop in Livingston, even though if they did, I was thinking about this the other day, the amount of additional economic activity that would be here would be huge, right? So instead of flying into Bozeman and renting a car there, which most people honestly would still do, they could stop here in Livingston and rent a car here, spend the night here, eat at the restaurants here, shop at the shops here, the outdoor stores and the maps and that sort of thing, visit with their guides, etc. On their way to the national park or Yellowstone or to go fishing or whatever. It would, well, first of all, it would probably exacerbate the affordable housing issue here, but it would also bring in a lot of jobs, a lot of investment, a lot of just economic activity that would really make a huge difference to this town. And it's kind of fun to think about that potential. Not to mention the fact that it could reduce traffic on the way to Bozeman if they had local service, which they probably wouldn't, but you never know. Maybe somebody brings in a light rail setup and puts that on the tracks. Lots of possibilities. All right, we're going to cross Clark again on the way up here. If you have watched this channel before, you may have seen me tell about my own personal story here. And that involved, in 2016, we sold our house and most of our stuff, all our cars, etc. And we took our kids and went and traveled for a year, almost exactly a year, around Europe. And we slow traveled, so we'd spend a month at a time in a place, generally, roughly. And then we came back, and we didn't. The property prices had risen. We didn't have solid jobs. We were freelancers, and we didn't really want to settle down completely. But this is home, and so we basically lived in a series of house sitting gigs and short-term rentals. And our friends own this. I think it's called the Absorica Guest House, and it's this brick one here. It was redone 10 or 15 years ago, rehabbed. It's absolutely beautiful inside. And in the winter months, back then they didn't really have as much business, so they rented to us at a monthly rate, which was awesome. And so we stayed there several times. And it's still, I think all of these are vacation rentals now. There's a unit in the front and then a unit in the back, and then those two wooden units, which may or may not be VRBOs, or vacation rentals, I guess. VRBOs are brand. Anyway, we stayed there. We stayed at another house in town. We stayed out in the Shields Valley area, a couple other places, just making things work as we we took trips down to Central America, back to the East Coast. Here's Lewis Street, starting to get downtown. I went back to Europe for 2 trips in 2019 and ended up renting a place just before the pandemic started. So we took a ghost signs tour. The Yellowstone Gateway Museum puts on. They're free, I believe. Maybe they're not free, but they're not expensive. And we thought, we're going to have some ghost sightings, but the ghost signs are these no longer relevant advertisements, which are in their own right very cool and interesting. We got a lot of history about the town from that great tour guide. Didn't last that long, an hour and a half maybe. Got a ton of info. It was great. You can sign up for those on the museum's website. I want to point out this building used to be the Dan Bailey's building, and they used it as storage, and then before that they had fly tying there. All these ladies would be in there fly tying. Now they rehabbed it, and at the base is Elk River Books, new, used, and rare books. Great place, and they have all sorts of readings and stuff. Kathleen Interior and Lady Smith, and then up top they have residences, and it looks much better than it did. And it's kind of neat to have that investment in the town as well. This First Interstate Bank building has been redone a couple years ago. This is the Hyatt House. This used to be part of the Park Hotel, and from what I understand, that was it. And then this building over here was it. I should have talked about the bakery because it's amazing down there. Show you the sign. And there was sorry to pan up, like a crosswalk, so you could walk. You didn't have to come down to the street level to cross over. I think that's the story we were told. The Empire Theater has 2 screens, small theaters, small cinemas. The Walk is the Chinese restaurant in town. We have 2 Thai food restaurants. The Owl Cocktail Lounge. This is a cocktail lounge. Here's our post office, and off to the left is one of the Carnegie libraries. I think that's right, Carnegie? One of those billionaires that back in the robber baron days, that built a bunch of libraries. And it's beautiful. It's been added on to, but it's really beautiful. A huge resource for the community if you need to use the internet. Our kids would go there and just pick out books and research stuff and all kinds of stuff like that. So very, very cool resource. And they have meeting rooms for teens that want to meet up, or other kids or activities or groups. We used to take our kids there for their little kid programs, and they loved it, especially in the winter when we wanted to get out of the house. Excuse me.
I respect it, but
well, you can see the ice on the ground here. Not too bad. Oh, we're over an hour, so I should wrap this up. This is the Murray Hotel. The Murray restaurant, the bistro, has just traded hands from the owner, former chef and owner, to to one of the other chefs who's now the new owner. The Murray bar, which is kind of the backside there, switched hands as well. And then you've got the back entrance to Dan Bailey's Sporting Goods. You can still stay at the Murray Hotel. It's an old historic cowboy hotel. Fantastic place to stay. I've actually never stayed there, but the rooms are cool. And they have this really neat old lobby. They have an elevator that it's a sort of a staff operated thing, so you have to have the elevator person run it for you. Hi there. And here's the depot. And as I've said before, it is currently, here's Gil's Goods and the bar, Murray Bar. I've mentioned before, I love the architecture of it, but it's currently an event space in the winter and a museum in the summer. And it's definitely worth a stop in if you have the time. Looking this way, you've got a lot of these great neon signs, and back at that Tesla building, and then also down here is, you can kind of see the sign below the Mexican sign, which is a Mexican restaurant, for Catabaticus, the other brewery I mentioned. Also a neat space to hang out. Anyway, check out our other Livingston videos for a more comprehensive view of our wonderful little town here. Please take the time to answer that question I asked earlier, which is, we're going to go down one more block, which is, would you be interested in paying for an ad-free version? It wouldn't be a whole lot. And if so, what do you think would be a fair price that you'd be willing to pay? And honest answer, if it's no, that's great. If it's $100 a month, that's great. Let me know. That'd be awesome. If it's 99 cents a month, let me know that. This is a great Perkon Park, great coffee shop, amazing bakery, Dreamboat Bakery, and they've opened up this outdoor space for rental events. And I should have said that earlier. There's the Catabatic sign. I got so excited to come down here and show you this view that I forgot to show you those. Across the way is the Beanery restaurant. It's kind of a diner style. Some good breakfast food in there if you're into it. Got a train going through, of course. Livingston Bar and Grill. The great bar, and it's kind of higher end, and their restaurant, their opening hours are a little quirky. I can never quite figure them out. Anyway, I wanted to end up with this view. I was talking about it at the beginning, and I just wanted to share it with you because it makes me smile every time I look down this iconic downtown, Old West looking streetscape and see those giant mountains up there, especially when there's snow. Any kind of weather coming through. Love it. Restaurants, coffee shops, art galleries, clothing stores, pottery, watchmaker, banks, furniture stores, frame gardens, all sorts of stuff down here. And if it sounds like I'm promoting my little town to visitors and tourists, I am, because it's a great place to visit. Anyway, thank you for joining me. We will see you again soon. I'm not sure where our next walk will be, but probably somewhere in Montana. Until then, as always, keep on stepping.